I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the most haunted city on earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
I'm Reba.
Have you been listening to Reba McEntire recently?
Yeah. the night went up in Georgia or something.
Okay.
Is that
sure.
it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds
It's a little actually
Reba-esque.
older than Reba, to be honest.
Yeah. But whatever floats your country boat. But anywho, welcome back, y'all. We have a really fun ghost mail for y'all today. So we are going to get into that in just a second, but we do have a few announcements for you. First off, this is our 65th ghost mail.
Woo!
That is 65 episodes, y'all, that we have filled with your stories, which is amazing, truly. Because think about that. Somebody out there do the math. Because we typically do 3 to 4 stories every episode, and we've done 65 of them.
I know.
That's insane.
Crazy.
And we
That's probably around 200
Probably.
stories. That's amazing.
and we love reading them.
Yeah.
So-
Thank you for sending them in, y'all. Seriously.
Yeah, if you have a ghost story that you've been itching to share, you can send it to us at ghostmail@hauntedcitypodcast.com. Like I say, usually in other ghost mail episodes, if you send it to us on places like Instagram or TikTok, we don't typically check DMs on there because it gets very thick. So if you want to make sure that we see the story, do send it to ghost mail, and we read them in order. So if you send it there, you will get an automated email to let you know that we did get it. But otherwise, we do have some other things. I do want to thank some new Parajunkies before we get into everything. We want to thank Kendra. We want to thank Taylor, Raven, Corey, Reese V, Kristen, Destiny, Yvonne, and thank y'all so much.
Yvonne. That's a French-ass name.
If any of you are actually familiar with where that came from, good for you.
Yeah.
But otherwise, thank y'all so much for becoming Parajunkies. We have actually, the next 2 weeks, we have very exciting things to do over on Patreon. We are going to be doing 2 live investigations over in the Savannah Paranormal Museum. We're going to do a little test because Chris spends a lot of time in the Savannah Paranormal Museum, as you would imagine. And so since he's going to be out of town, we thought it would be a great idea that JT and I go in there and try to do an investigation while he's not there. And then when he's back, the next week we'll do it with him there and see if we get anything different or any different vibes.
Yep.
So it's going to be really fun for Parajunkies who are watching this live. That is going to be next week or this week. This week, we're going to be doing the one with just JT and I. And then next week, we'll be doing it with Chris. For those of you who are listening to this when this goes public, this would have come out last week. We would have
But
been
you can watch it if you go on Patreon.
if you become a Parajunkie, you can watch it as the live stream. But as the live stream, it's very confusing. Time is not real. Anyways.
If you become a
We are
Parajunkie.
speaking to you from the past, and yet what we're talking about is the future, but it might be the past because we don't know when you're listening to this.
Yes.
Yeah, if you become a Parajunkie, you can see the first of the live streams, and then you could watch the second live when we got Chris back.
There you go.
That's it.
Yes.
That's it.
And Kayla, who's watching on the live stream, did get the reference. And no, I don't like Mike and Ike's.
That is so funny, Kayla.
But I do have a nice updo today.
Yes, you do.
Anyways, we're going to stop making Mad TV references now, and we're going to continue on.
I'll never stop.
Other things that we have to announce, we actually got a new haunted doll, as this seems to happen to us.
Yes.
This was dropped up to us today when we're filming this, and we were told that this doll just had to get out of her house. And she is a greasy girl.
Yes. Girl. So basically, We had somebody come by the studio today and drop this doll off. This person said that the doll is extremely haunted, and haunts her house. And most notably, this person cleans the doll. Let me try to get this right. This person cleans the doll's face, and after doing so, it's dry. But then when she checks back with the doll, like, a month or two later and looks at it, it has grease on it again. So she said, here's the greasy doll. Even the box is a little greasy. This person is not a greasy person.
No.
Okay. Very, very much very clean. So this is kind of crazy. So I'm going to go ahead. We're going to show it on the podcast. If you are just listening to this, you can switch it over to video on Spotify, or you can see it on YouTube.
She might just be the Greasy Strangler. You ever seen that horrific movie, Chris? The Greasy Strangler? You need to go home and watch that tonight.
Tonight, everyone needs to watch that. All right, here we go.
Okay, greasy lady. Her bag's greasy.
Oh, pull the mic over. Pull the mic over.
Oh, she's so greasy.
Pull.
She's very greasy.
I would like to say she's well hydrated, but
What?
That's a thick sheen.
that is a massive sheen
God,
of
she's
oil.
greasy as hell.
She is, yes. There's an unsettling sheen to her. And here's the thing. Items that sweat, items that produce any form of viscera or liquid, bad news.
Yeah.
They're so bad. Because a lot of people don't. People will talk about ectoplasm all the time. Mm-hmm. And one of the things about it is that it's about the connection of the spiritual to the physical. It is the residue left when the spiritual touches the physical. And if you've got something that is continuously creating any form of residue like that, that means there's an active physical manifestation of a spirit that is something physically passing into this world. That's the classic, what ectoplasm is. You find it on walls or things like that. It's where a spirit had made contact with a physical thing. So it's bad news for a doll, because that suggests that you've got a spirit that is consistently and constantly
Coming
testing
and
the
going.
boundaries of the doll.
I'm going to get a close up on her super greasy ass face. So give me 1 second.
She's just, and it's also unnerving. Just her general aura is
general, aura. It's weird. Oh.
Yeah. Well, and it's like there's obviously I am not a doll maker, nor have I ever met a doll maker. But the thing is there isn't really a logical reason why a traditional doll would just be oozing all the time.
All the time.
It's not like she has pores.
Now, I would like to say, so I know the person well who gave this to us, and this person would never fake anything like that, would not apply grease to this doll's face.
Sure.
This person is actually like definitely not like that, very trustworthy. And so she's been wanting to give this to us for a while. And when we opened the paranormal museum, she wanted to give it to us for the background at first, because it would be a nice little sheen in the background. But now that we have the museum, it's different.
Yeah, we were saying that you can compare it to her arm, and her arm is not greasy. It's just the face, and it looks like the grease is accumulating, I guess, in the mouth
In the
area.
mouth. It looks like she's drooling.
So I wonder if that's the, I guess, portal as a way to say it, but the
Hold it to the
transport
camera.
zone.
Hold it up to the camera again, like as close as you can. Yeah.
Like, y'all remember that trend where it was like the glazed donut makeup look? She has mastered it, truly. It's just weird
It is weird.
because it's not on her head. Like her bonnet is not greasy.
No, it's weird. She's,
All right.
She's a weird one.
She is a weird one. I think you're right about the ectoplasm, Chris.
I agree.
I think you're right about it. I think
The
it's
fact that
oozing.
it's coming out of her mouth now.
Yeah.
Because it's actually oozing out of her mouth.
It is.
And she says she like cleaned her one time with disinfectant, and she still and got her dry, and she still oozed. And what does she smell? I haven't
No, she doesn't smell.
Okay.
Well, there's a slight
does ectoplasm smell?
floral scent.
Does
She has a
ectoplasm smell?
slight floral
No.
scent.
Not typically.
Generally not.
Oh, so it might be.
Well, so like,
Oh, you know what? She smells like soap.
Oh, that would make sense.
that probably from the owner cleaning her.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it's from. Because she said she recently did it
I'm
and
gonna
still
say that
oozed.
there's active slime coming out of her mouth.
I'm literally
Like, it's
witnessing
dripping
it coming out.
Out of her mouth.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, come.
That okay?
Yeah. So I'm telling you, I think the mouth is the entry point, and don't get that twisted, y'all. But like, it really is.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Hold on. Wait a minute, Maddie. Will you come here and hold it right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They gotta see that. And then do this. Yeah. 1 second. What in the? All right. Hold on. 1 second. Now let me get.
Can you see that grease?
I could go get the spirit chat.
Whoa, and it looks like orange
Yeah.
in the corner of her mouth.
Yeah, it does.
We should get
Well, we have a ghost mail. We gotta get to the ghost mail. I know. This is exciting. Maybe okay. So, should we do maybe we should do an episode with her once Chris is back.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's have an episode where we talk about the greasy doll. I'll get some more information from the person. She's gonna want to stay anonymous. I will get some information from her, and we'll go from there. But I think like putting it next to spirit chat, maybe even doing it for a fix.
Yeah.
That's what we'll do. We'll do it for a fix and put the spirit chat around her for 30 minutes and see what's up with it. Okay, cool. All right.
That's
Boy,
unpleasant.
she's freaking wet. Okay, here we go.
Oh, yes. Hi.
Hello.
Yes.
We have a podcast.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
Now that we're
They're freaked out. Y'all are freaked out.
well,
Yeah,
no, I'm more like racking through my brain cells.
It's very bizarre
Yeah.
because there's no reason for it.
Right. So weird. Anyways.
All right. So what are we doing again?
A ghost,
Ghost
mail.
mail.
And don't forget, Ghostmail has its own lighting cue.
Oh.
Like so, I like the
Yeah.
the blue and the pinkish
It's
purple.
cute.
It's fun. Okay.
Before we get into our first story, can you remove her grease bag?
Oh Lord.
Her grease sack?
It's gross.
Yeah. Thank you. So that's super cute.
That is truly the wettest doll I think I've ever seen.
Truly.
All
Without
right.
doubt.
Woo!
All right.
Let's jump into it. I'm excited to hear these ghost mails.
So our first one comes from Leslie. So it says, where to start? Ultimately, as long as I can physically remember, I have had something dark on the edges of my life. As a very young child, I had multiple experiences in which I was able to accurately recall a place, a person, etc., as if I had been there or met them previously, and yet I had not. The most prevalent of these occurred while my parents were driving me and my siblings to Andrews, Texas to stay with my grandparents for the first time since they moved there for the summer, while they would be preparing our new home for us to move in. I pulled my usual, I remember this place, to which my parents replied, you haven't been here and you must be confusing it with somewhere else. This excuse no longer placated me, and I argued with them, going so far to say, at the end of the street, there is a certain colored house, and we will take a right, and then we will see the ice cream place. My parents scoffed and laughed right up until we came to the right turn with the colored house, and the ice cream place appeared down the road. Just sit back in your seat, my mom said gruffly. I knew I'd made them upset yet again, but I was right. Why wouldn't they listen, and what was wrong with me? This incident quickly spiraled over the summer as I apparently walked out of my grandparents' home in the middle of the night and was found sitting in the front yard of a home almost a block away. They described my state as confused and like I was in a trance. He's gone now, I whispered as they rushed me back to the house, and everyone was freaking out. After a warm blanket and a hot cup of cocoa, I had forgotten the entire experience and fell asleep on the couch. I woke up later to my grandparents talking excitedly, concern on their face. Down the street, there were now police cars, a fire truck, and an ambulance. The man from down the street had been found by his children when they arrived to visit. He had apparently had a heart attack and collapsed in the hall during the night and passed away. My grandparents were very upset by what had transpired that morning. They locked the doors and we weren't allowed to go outside at all that day. My parents showed up to pick us up 2 days later, which was about a month early. They made some excuse that they were so sad and had missed us, but I knew that I had caused it. My grandmother barely spoke to me and she didn't even hug me goodbye. I began keeping everything from my parents and did not tell them when I felt something or thought I saw or heard something. And for a while, they believed that everything was fine. It wasn't until about 2 years later we were transferred with my dad's job and moved into a house on Larry Drive. My sister and I had bedrooms in the basement along with a living/game room. My parents had been hyping me up as I would have my own room for the first time, but the initial tour through the house made me very uneasy. The house always felt wrong to me, but other than my older sister, there was no one who would listen. Even playing in the backyard, it felt wrong, though I can't quite explain it. I had several weird experiences where I came close to something dangerous happening there. Initially, I had been poking around outside in the backyard and popped open an electrical light box on the side of the deck, and a huge black widow popped out at me. That's JT's worst nightmare.
Hit the button.
There were several babies, and my dad...
Hit it again.
JT is a major arachnophobe, so if you're wondering why.
Yeah, they sound like this.
Okay, yeah, I know.
And my dad jerked me back just in time. Somehow I did not get bit by any of them. Then a few weeks later, we were all in the backyard and had a rattlesnake slither out from rocks by the back fence. I just stepped onto that rock, and my sister and I had literally been sitting on it not 5 minutes before. I screamed and ran to my parents, who were obviously freaked out by the event. My parents were constantly telling me to stop getting myself into bad situations. I will tell you, you were in Texas. As somebody who grew up in a very snaky area, you kind of can't control such situations, but I feel you. Anyways, my parents were constantly telling me not to get myself into bad situations. I didn't feel like I put myself in them, but then again, I was a kid and we don't exactly use our whole brain when we are young. One day, a girl from my class at school invited me to go to Sunday Bible school with her. I asked my parents and they said yes. I am sure they thought, finally, something she can do that keeps her out of trouble. I began going every Sunday and I absorbed everything I could. I honestly felt for the first time that I was truly accepted and belonged where I was, and for a few months, things were great in my life. I was happy, smiling, I didn't worry about anything. About a month later, I was visited by something in the middle of the night.
Ooh.
I am just over 50 years old now, and it has been almost 40 years, and I can still see it in my mind and feel the absolute terror that it gave me. I woke up and rubbed my eyes as something sort of like white wisp of smoke was at the end of my bed. I sat up in bed and that wisp of smoke began to materialize, is the best way I can describe it. It was pitch black in this room, and this thing seemed to emit its own glow. It sounds so odd when I type it out, but as if it was glowing white, wispy fire of a thing kept getting bigger and moving closer to me. I knew in every fiber of my being that this thing was bad in every sense of the word. I had no concept of evil at this point in my life, but I knew if I didn't do something that it wasn't going to go well for me. There was almost a feeling of menace and bad intentions coming off of it. I started screaming at the top of my lungs. No one came. My sister was literally less than 20 feet from it. I started screaming at the top of my lungs, and she was less than 20 feet from my room. My room had gotten so hot that I was literally covered in sweat. I could not physically push myself further into the headboard, and the thing had gotten so big that it was now partially blocking the path of the door. Several of its wisps had become dangerously close to touching me. I started to freak out and screaming harder than ever and remember calling out to God and was now sobbing when all of a sudden, in an instant, two things happened. The thing literally flashed white hot and was gone, and my sister burst through the door. She was completely freaked out based on the behavior and the fact that my room felt like a freaking sauna. I was crying and trying to tell her what happened. She helped me up, and I realized I had wet myself and not even realized it. My sister helped me strip the bed and stayed with me while I showered. She let me sleep with her the rest of the night. The next day, she tried to explain what had happened, but my parents were not having any of it. My throat was raw from screaming so hard and long, and my mom said I was obviously coming down with something and had a fever, which caused a nightmare and me to wet the bed, and there was no arguing with her. After this, I pulled farther away from everyone. I didn't share my experiences with anyone and lived in a constant state of apprehension and stopped going to Bible school. I would sneak into bed with my sister or into the living room and sleep on the couch until I heard my parents get up and would race downstairs. We finally moved away a few years later when my father was transferred. I wish that I could say that this solved things or made them better. Ultimately, any room I ever had in any of our houses was the hottest room in the house, even if I switched rooms. I have had so many different brushes with something that I don't doubt what it is at this point. I'll share some of them later. Until then, thank you for giving me a place to share what has happened to me without judgment. It means more than you know. Leslie.
Aw. Thanks, Leslie.
Honestly,
thank you for sharing.
It's a fascinating story.
It
And
really
I'm so
is.
sorry that you didn't have the ability to discuss it with your loved ones. Like, luckily, your sister was obviously open to hearing you out. It's very interesting. It almost feels like you might have had some type of attachment in a way of, it just kind of naturally attracted not great situations to you in that sort of energy.
Yeah.
But
And it's interesting too, because you'll hear all the time about cold spots. You'll hear all the time about how cold spots are, indicators of cold spots. Hot spots, they are different because what is happening with a hot spot, a cold spot is where a spirit is using the ambient temperature, pulling heat out of the air to power itself. A hot spot is when a spirit is expending energy, using energy. And generally that has to be a pretty powerful entity to alter the temperature of a room to make it hotter. That is the kind of thing that most people would deem demonic.
I agree.
That's just one of those things, demons and fire go hand in hand in so many ways. I'm not saying that it is demonic. I'm just saying that that kind of thing is what you would expect when people are talking about demonic presences. A cold spot is almost always a spirit drawing energy to itself. But a hot spot means that it is expending energy, and that burning sensation and that warmth is because it is actively doing something. Mm-hmm. But the question is, what was it doing?
That's exactly it. I wish I had an answer for you.
Right.
But obviously, so what piques my interest is the fact that the second that you called out to God, which you had all your faith in, from what it sounds like, it dissipated.
That is a classic case as well.
Yeah. Which tends to go hand in hand. And like we usually say, we say demonic,
It's
but
a catch-all word.
It's a
Yeah.
catch-all word for malevolent entities. But something that malevolent entities do not mesh well with is things of light and are powerful and that you put faith into.
Right.
So I think that whatever it was trying to cause you harm, but it realized it couldn't.
Or influence you to be subservient to it, to serve it in fear and serve it in, becoming obedient to its presence. Because if it is oppressive, then you become oppressed. So it's a very strange thing, and I guess we could use more stories to help kind of round this out. Because right now what we have are these incidents where it's like, oh yeah, that's kind of intriguing. That's a really, what is it? It's a very descriptive moment, but as we're checking the boxes of what it could be, we're stuck because we don't have an end note. We don't know what it was after, I guess, is a question. Sometimes sometimes it's unknowable. You don't get to know. But if there are other stories that are about this sensation, this feeling, because if you have an entity that is drawing like bad luck to you, then there are lots of cultures who have very specific entities that are in charge of bad luck, or in charge of that kind of cursed karma or that darkness. So and in most cultures there is a reversible connotation to it. But again, we would have to know more.
My only guess would be that because you obviously, especially as a child, had very gifted psychic abilities, it drew itself to you.
You're a light in the darkness, and you draw these things, especially in the case of some dark occurrence. If something dark happened to somebody and there was a spirit that was drawn to that event, and there you were shining as bright as you are.
Right.
It makes sense that the draw of the darkness would come to you.
Exactly. But yes, Leslie, if you can send us more of your stories, we would absolutely love to read them. And we can probably do what we did with the other story that we got the update for. We can read this again, and then we can reconvene with the new updates. And I think that would give a better kind of idea of, or at least a little bit more solid theory, I think. But nonetheless, thank you so much for sending that in. And that is a fascinating story, truly. Our next one comes from Natalie, and they said, "Hi all, I have been a listener since the early episodes thanks to my For You page.
Nice.
I became a Parajunkie for the Conjuring House Live, which we very much appreciate, and love listening to y'all. This is a different email than the one I use for Patreon. So
Okay.
I am a progressive Christian. I have my undergrad in religion and am currently in seminary to become a deacon in the Lutheran Church.
Fantastic.
That's possibly a chaplain one day. So that is super impressive. Good for you. All that said, I first want to thank you for being very open-minded about all religions and faith practices. I was sold when I think it was Chris talked about how angels actually were scary and not some muscular guy with flowing hair and white robe. Very true. I would not say I'm sensitive, and most times I will deny ghost vibes or heebie-jeebies because I'm in a church alone frequently. I need to protect my peace, but I love to hear about ghost stories as I've had experiences when I was younger and then watched as my kids experience them as well. My first encounter was when I was 4. My great-grandmother had died about 6 months prior to this incident. We were on a walk as a family. My mom, brother, and dad, and I swore I saw my great-grandmother in a window of a house. My mom turned and saw no one. The family that lived in that house was a young couple. I would see my great-grandma in this window frequently as time passed, and my mom would get so frustrated with me. Finally, one day, she went and asked the couple if they had any relatives staying with them. They told her no. I only saw my great-grandma in the window a few more times after that. I wouldn't say anything to my mom because it would upset her. The second time was when I was 9. My grandfather passed away from lung cancer. He was an avid smoker. I'm shocked he didn't set the house on fire with the amount of burns on the furniture in his bed. Yes, he smoked in his bed. About 2 months after his passing, I stayed overnight for the first time since he passed. My cousins and I had our own room with 2 twin beds that we would stay in when we slept over. My grandma came and said goodnight and went to bed. I remember being in a bit of a twilight between sleeping and awake when the door opened, and it was my grandpa. He came in and checked the closet for monsters, gave me a kiss, and told me he loved me and walked out of the room, leaving the door open. I rolled over to see if my cousin was awake in the bed next to me, and she was fast asleep. I can remember thinking to myself that it couldn't have been a dream because I could distinctly smell his cigarette breath. It might sound weird to some, but for me, that smell is comforting. I told my mom the next day, and she actually believed me. She told me that not to tell my grandma because it would upset her, and she told me that it was my grandpa's way of saying goodbye to me. The other time he came to me was about a year later. If it was just one of us sleeping over, my cousins and I now would sleep with my grandma on my grandpa's side of the bed. I got up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I saw my grandpa on the toilet smoking a cigarette. Sounds so weird and also hilarious, but I wasn't fazed. He said, "Go back to bed, honey." So I went back to bed. Again, it felt like a dream, but it was so vivid. He came to me 2 more times in my life, but these felt so much more like dreams. Once when I was pregnant with my first daughter, my husband worked the night shift at the time, and we had just found out she was going to be a girl. He told me she was going to be the sweetest girl and that we should look at biblical names that mean pleasant. And then he said it's not a family name, but it will be connected to a family name. And once I figure it out, my gut will just know. So the next morning, I Googled and found the name Naomi. Naomi and Ruth are in the Bible, and my mom's middle name and my cousin's name is Ruth. The other time he came to me was the night before we found out my dad had an aggressive brain cancer. I would sleepwalk at times, and I remember coming into my kitchen and sitting down at the table where he was sitting. He had tears in his eyes and told me that things were going to get really hard and that he couldn't tell me anything else. He wanted me to know that my second daughter would come soon. I wasn't pregnant yet. And that no matter what, my dad, his son-in-law, would get to meet her, and that she was going to be the fire in our family and to give her a strong traditional name. The whole next day felt like I was a step behind. I couldn't shake the feeling at work, and when I got to the call about my dad, it was like time caught up to me. And yes, my second has lived up to what my grandpa told me. Aside of these paranormal experiences I talked about above, we experienced some stuff with my daughters and my dad right around this time in hospice and right after his passing. My dad was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer in 2016 and passed away in 2018. He went through the ringer of treatments and surgeries, but it gave us 2.5 more years with him. My family and I lived in New York and my parents in the Wisconsin, Illinois area during all of this. When my dad was moved into hospice, I was able to be with him and my family for about 2 weeks. I was staying with a friend that was about 15 minutes from the hospice center and would commute back and forth. In the 2 weeks I was there, 7 different occasions on various radio stations, the song Only the Good Die Young by Billy Joel came on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was one of my dad's favorite songs and artists. The first couple of times I was convinced it was just the station, presets, and changed the station multiple times. That didn't matter. He ended up staying in hospice longer than we anticipated, so I went back to New York and basically waited for a call. About a week later, we did get a call and packed up our kids and left in the middle of the night to drive from New York to Wisconsin. That song came on 4 times on our way there. Again, changing stations, changing areas of the country. After he passed, my husband had to go back to New York to work while we stayed for another week. I didn't hear that song at all until the morning of my dad's visitation. I drove to the airport to get my husband, and it came on the radio again. Of course, I was a bawling mess and also feeling like I might be losing my mind a bit. I also realized I had been hearing various Pink Floyd songs, another one of my dad's favorites. I didn't tell anyone except my husband because I really felt like I was crazy. After the funeral, both of my girls would say that they saw my dad at our house. They were 4 years old and 18 months at the time. They would see him at different times, but in the same places. My youngest didn't see her big sister say or do anything. All these accounts were independent, and they didn't know that the other was seeing him. Most of the time at bedtime, my 18-month-old, she started talking very early and hasn't stopped since, would describe my dad's house that he grew up in. She would also list many of his siblings. He was the middle of 9, so there were a lot of them, and even though she had been around them at the funeral, she wouldn't have been able to say who was who in person. But when she would recount these stories, she knew exactly who was who and where they were on this farm they grew up on. We gave her a somewhat recent picture of them all and asked her who they were, and she was clueless. But when we gave her a photo of all of them when they were young, she knew every single one of their names. She is now 6 and isn't able to do that, but still has a deep connection with my dad as if they lived another life together. She grieves him so much more than my oldest, and my oldest remembers the time she spent with him. By the time she was born, he was already sick and didn't see him a lot. So back to the music. My dad passed in September and his birthday is in November. His first birthday gone, I didn't want to do anything. I wanted it to be a normal day. My husband suggested we make German chocolate cupcakes, my dad's favorite, and sing happy birthday at the end of the day. So we went out to the mall and did some shopping. We had been there a total of 10 minutes and Pink Floyd, I Wish You Were Here, came on. My dad was not a singer, but would often sing this to me after I moved to New York before he got sick. So I'm crying in the middle of a JCPenney's. I pull myself together, and about 10 minutes after that, Only the Good Die Young by Billy Joel came on over the intercom playing music in the mall. Now I'm crying in Claire's, and so is my husband because it felt like too much of a coincidence. We collect ourselves and continue to shop. We were legit feeling like we were in the Twilight Zone and were focused on getting our kids shoes and both agreed that we were not listening to the radio on the way home. We stopped at Panera and got to get something to eat. We sit down and the song that my dad and I danced to at our wedding comes over the speakers, Landslide by Fleetwood Mac. Now I'm crying in Panera and we finished up our dinner and got out of there. We did go home and have cupcakes. I took a picture just to have a memory of it, and there is an orb on the photo right next to my daughter. I will see if I can find a photo and send it separately. There have been other little moments that just seem like they can't be coincidences. Thanks for listening. Love supporting and listening to y'all, Natalie.
Wow.
Those are amazing stories.
Yeah. Communication through music. That's really interesting.
I think that's so. All of those are amazing stories, and honestly, like we always say, family encounters are some of the most common occurrences.
Absolutely,
especially if your loved one who has passed knows that it will help you in the grieving process. They will come through, and I've heard a number of times of people hearing the song that their loved one enjoyed
absolutely
after they pass, and those are little ways that they're letting you know that they're still around in a way and they're able to watch out for you. And I think it's really wonderful to hear that there was an orb by your daughter, because that is a very interesting point to make, that she had such vivid connections to his life even though she was so little. Just an overall amazing stories. And same with your grandfather. I definitely do think it sounds like he was definitely wanting to hang around a little bit longer after he passed.
It's funny. Just yesterday, I was having a long conversation about the fact that when I was a kid, they used to have commercials on TV telling you not to smoke in bed.
Really?
Yes, that's how common smoking was.
Really?
And how common setting your house on fire from smoking in bed was. So it was like just a common thing to happen. And when you were saying that, I was like, oh, that's so weird, because I had a long rant about how different the world is now.
Right.
Because when I was a kid, there were literal commercials that were like, don't smoke in bed, or you'll set your house on fire.
I mean, but that does make sense.
Yes.
It's-
No. I
yeah.
mean, it was a necessity, but it was one of those interesting things. And I know fully because my dad was a heavy smoker when I was a kid. And I think the smell of cigarettes is very nostalgic to me. It very much encapsulates a sensation, like going on long road trips when my dad's smoking. And so the
man.
inside of the
Yeah.
car is just a cigarette haze fog. That's my childhood. That's just
Oh, yeah.
what
I
my
know you
childhood
feel
smelled
that.
like.
Oh, I very much so feel that. See, I feel like with cigarette smoke, it either does that where it does the nostalgia thing or it makes you absolutely sick.
Oh, you're gross.
'Cause-
Yeah,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
grossed out by it, yeah.
Because it's like, I totally understand the feeling of like associating someone with that smell. Like I associate that with my grandmother and my father as well. He's quit now. But yeah, but when I was a kid, yes, I totally understand where you're coming from. But I could totally see, especially with my grandmother, that being away, that I would notice her being around is that
That
smell.
smell, right?
But yeah, I think that's lovely. And I would love to hear if you have any other experiences or if you would like to share any of the experiences that your children have had. That would be phenomenal. It sounds like all of you are very in touch with your family members. So it's super interesting. And also super interesting that you are so open and being very entrenched in the church. I think that's
yeah.
wonderful.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. And I would love to hear if you have any experiences from being in church so frequently as well. But awesome. Thank you, Natalie.
Well, I think we have room for one more.
Okay. Ooh.
For one more.
All right. So this last one comes from Michaela. Hey, y'all. Just wanted to hop in and provide some tidbits regarding Mormons. Obviously, this isn't a ghost story, so no need to read this on. Oh, never mind. Okay. Oh, okay. Super cool. Okay, I'm going to read that later. We'll read one from Abby. Okay. Hey, y'all. My name is Abby Long, time listener here. I've been completely freaked out for the past couple of days since I've watched your most recent video with the haunted dolls, and this came through in January, I want to say. This happened earlier this week on Tuesday while I was cooking dinner and had your podcast on my iPad right next to me so I could watch it while I cooked. Y'all brought out Charlie and started talking about him, and it was around the time when y'all were smelling the sweet smells. From behind me, I heard my dog get up from the couch, which he was dead asleep on, and start walking towards our back door, which is to the right of me. I watched him from the kitchen, and he was almost to the back door when his tail straightened, and it looked like someone yanked him back hard.
Oh.
For some context, he is a 60-pound husky who keeps his tail always curled. We both froze for a second like that just happened. He ran into his kennel and would not leave for the rest of the night. I'm so sorry.
Please.
I have no idea how to explain what happened, and ever since Tuesday, he will not go to that spot. I have to pick him up and carry him outside every day because he won't go near the back door. Could this have been Charlie, or could it just have been a coincidence? Thank y'all for reading my story.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
That's intense.
That's
and
insane.
what's interesting is, and we've heard this from even other podcasters who are of the spooky variety. It's the fact that the people who are listening are basically in a state of opening up their mind to possibilities. And so people actually start having more experiences because they're listening to stories that are giving them more confidence in the realities of these other things. So it's not necessarily that it was Charlie as much as it was the fact that you were listening to something that was kind of emboldening the spirits around you to suggest that they could make their presence known or do something active in your purview so that you would acknowledge their existence. It's very interesting because that is such a pointed thing, something very easy to gauge as to the effect of it. So while I don't necessarily think that it was Charlie per se, I do think it was because while we are talking and discussing, we are opening doors and we're opening possibilities and we're allowing spirits to have a better opportunity to present themselves. So maybe it's just a case of your your ability to perceive has grown enough to where the spirits can now act upon it and show you their presence. Of course, poor doggy.
Yeah. Tell your husky we say sorry.
Yeah, jeez.
We love him. And tell him we said hi. But yeah, a super wild story. That's crazy. But thank y'all so much for sending in your ghost mail. And hopefully you enjoyed seeing our unboxing of our greasy baby.
Greasy baby is greasy.
Greasy.
Yeah. And again, if you have a ghost story you'd like to send to us, you can send it to ghostmail@hauntedcitypodcast.com. Otherwise, thank y'all again for listening to whenever you are viewing this. And my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.